What's up guys, I'm back here with another video. This time I'm with the 2022 BMW S1000 single R, lovingly referred to as the K63. Now on this review we're going to do something a little bit different. I'm not going to be doing my whole ride review because I've done a single R before. I did the M1000 single R, which is the same body, same pretty much everything as this bike except minus the wings and an entire engine that's different on the other bike. But I'll be testing the engine on this bike. And if you guys want to see the review I have of what I thought about the single R in general, here's the M1000 single R review there on the top right. Check it out if you get a chance. Now what we'll be doing on this bike today is I'll be testing how this bike rides with somebody else's tune on it. That's right, this bike got tuned by somebody else. The customer, well, we were looking for a bike in Southern California so we can test our stacks and show people what the gains are, and this person just happened to have someone else's tune on the bike, and I'm going to go ahead and test that tune. We're even going to pull out the file from the ECU and I'll compare it to our stuff, and I'll tell you exactly what this person offers and what they actually succeed in giving you. So I'll go through the list of all the stuff that they offer on their website. They say, hey, they're just as good as us, if not better, and here's what they offer, and we'll go through the coding line by line because we can do that. Now the more important, of course, thing is that we're going to test our stacks before and after on this bike. We're going to make sure that we're getting some good power down, and I'll show you guys how to install those stacks on this bike because we get a lot of questions about how to install the stacks on this bike, and they get really stuck on a certain point. I'll go over that with you guys. But first, let's just do an overall ride review on this bike and how it rides. Now this right now feels kind of doggy down low. For some reason, I don't know why, this feels more dog than stock. But once you lay into the throttle, the power comes in. But it's very odd that it feels so, it's like, it's very smooth, soft off the hip, but when you want to hit it, it's not there. This bike has, on the throttle hit, it does feel sloppy. Like it feels very slow on the tip end, so if I want instant power, it's not there. And I have this in Dynamic Pro. I've made sure I've maxed out the settings on this bike. Yeah, this bike feels slow on the hit. It's really weird. And usually that's indicative of file tables or throttle tables that are just put to 100% right off the rip. Very lazily done. You can see it's going through the RPM range, and I can feel the power coming in on the bike, which is odd. So maybe this is good for a roll racer setup, but we're on a single R here. This is not a roll racer, and even roll racers that want a good amount of power off the hit, this isn't good for a roll racer right here, for example. Let's go over the shifting here. The shifting feels stock, which they're claiming the shifting's modified, but that does feel stock. I'll verify that. It does feel stock though. And of course, this doesn't make as much power as the M1000 single R that has the 205 horsepower. This has a smaller motor with, I mean, not a smaller motor, it's still the same cc's, it's 1000 cc, but it has a bunch of different stuff. No shift cam, different head. There's a whole bunch of different stuff in this that gives it less power. It's the same motor shared with the S1000 XR, so they're both the same bikes. This one actually is lighter than the XR, so it's going to be faster. But I'm going to test some speed stuff here in a second, but this tip-in is very weird. Like, it delays for just a little bit. It's very odd. You don't get that hit like you normally want. Almost feels like a rain mode hit, but I'm in Dynamic Pro. It's really weird, so I'm going to check that out. Alright, now let's go ahead and test the 60 through 130 on the BMW single R without stacks, without our tuning. This is a competitor's tune on here. We're just testing it baseline it like this. Alright, here we go. Alright, we saw there 5.6 respectable time for the S1000 single R. I mean, we got to consider versus the M1000 single R, this is short 40 horsepower at 165. So still pretty good, especially for the weight it has. It's over 400, you know, it's like mid 400 pounds wet. Decent, but I'm really kind of weird against this. This throttle is very odd. Just the way it comes in, and I don't have this in rain mode. I have the throttle turned all the way up, and it's like the power it's like I give it 100% and you can feel it go to 100% after I give it 100%. So it's like it lags and it gets into it. So I don't like that feel, even though, although some people might like it for tip-in and how the track feels and stuff like that. With our tuning, you get more of a one-to-one feel if you want, but you can also dull it by going into different modes or dulling the throttle by putting it possibly into rain or dynamic, and it gives you that dull feel if you'd like it. This one just gives you a dull feel, and if you want to put it into rain, it gets duller. So I kind of don't like that. Even the stock throttle feels better than this. So I think that's going to do it for our quick overview of what the competition had on this bike. I'm going to take her back home, ECU out of this thing, pull the coating out of it, and see if what the person claims is true. I will go line by line on everything. We're going to check it out. So to the dyno right now. See you guys there. What's up, guys? We are all strapped down. I'm back here at Lee's in San Diego, and today we're going to be testing our velocity stacks against the single R, which also applies to our BMW XR. These are the newer models, the K63. You can see right there. I'm getting a lot of questions about how much power these stacks actually make with tuning, and they want to make a video. So let's make a video. Why not? While we're at it, we got our K67 stacks here, which apply to this bike, and I'll show you guys how to install that too. I'll do it right here on the dyno. We're going to do before and after testing on the dyno, same day, same strap, same everything. I'm not even gonna unstrap the bike. I'm gonna rip it all down right here, install the stacks, tune it, and then do it again. And you can see I've got redundant AFRs here just to make sure we got correct AFR. Everything's strapped down, ready to start testing right now. So we're gonna be testing a competitor's tune, which people do know. I'm not gonna name the name, but people do know the tuner. And we're gonna test to see what their tuning does versus our tuning. Here we go. All right, now we've got the tuned file, or sorry, the competitor's tune file done. We ran it 4 times in the dyno, and that's on top of already writing this thing over here, so it was warm already. And I'm repeating a number here, you can see, just repeating a number. So these are my last 2 passes here to give you guys kind of an idea of what we're looking at here. This hump right here, this is noticeable in the dyno. You can feel the bike buck. And you can see it goes up to about 17.0 AFR right there. Now I have 2 sniffers in here. Redundant sniffers, so I don't hear anyone crying, saying there's something wrong with the sniffer or something like that. I got 2 sniffers in the tailpipe. They're reading exactly the same thing here. You can see this thing is lean, no good right here. Then it looks like he's commanding, or sorry, the tuner is commanding for this tune, a 14.2 AFR, which right here, I mean, I guess you put it a little bit lean to make a little bit more power, but this is kind of what happens when you have like an armchair tuner, someone that doesn't actually R&D the bike, and they just kind of press some buttons on the keyboard and nudge a little bit. This you can actually feel right here. This is no good right here. There's no tuner that's worth his salt that's gonna let this leave like this right here. So this is his tuning. Now we're gonna put the bone stock file back into it and see how that does compared to his tuning and move on from there. All right, and while I'm flashing our file into it to see what the difference is there, let's look at that stock versus the competitor tune here. This is bad, guys. So this is $700 right here for 0.2 horsepower peak to peak. But not only that, you can see the red is the competitor tune and the blue is stock. We are losing all kinds of power in the mid-range. And look at the AFR. AFR is nasty. Now this is a typical hump right here we see in the middle of the AFR, but this tuner made it so much worse. And you can tell, this tune has never been R&D. This person's never gotten one of these bikes in the dyno to test this, to see what their tuning does. This is what we see typically. A bone stock bike makes 0.2 horsepower. That's it, 0.2 horsepower. Now one thing I will say is that this bike on the cold start definitely has improved with the competitor tune. They turned off the cold start strategy, and when I flashed the original in and I started up, it almost scared me. The thing was so loud and nasty. So I will say they definitely did that.
But man, this is bad. We're really lean the whole way, super lean here. That's why the bike is literally bucking on the dyno in 5th gear when I just ring her out. This is not good, okay? So now we're gonna throw in our file and we're gonna see how it does against the competitor file and the stock file and see if there's any changes. And then we're gonna install these stacks right here. All right, all wrapped up, testing our file now on the stock bike with no stacks. See, the stacks are still here. And here's what we got. Now, the red is going to be the previous tuning, and the blue is going to be our tuning. You can see there are gains everywhere across the entire range. We had a peak of 165, almost 166 versus that 162. Now, you're thinking that's only 3-wheel horsepower, it's not a big deal, but look everywhere here. 6-wheel horsepower right here, along with 4-wheel torque. Now, on a car, that's not a big deal. On a bike, that's a big deal. Look over here. This is 12-wheel horsepower we're gaining in the mid-range. 10-wheel torque in the mid-range. That is massive for a bike like this that weighs only like 450 pounds. Even here, more massive gains. I mean, it is ridiculous what we're gaining here. The AFR looks so much better here. And even at the peak here, we've got an extended red line. We're widening the power band right here, basically, on this thing. So there's less shifting of the track. And right here at peak, we're gaining 5-wheel horsepower right there, and we're gaining 3-wheel torque. So there are gains across the entire range, even down low. Even we're way down low there. And that's just due to just better mapping, basically. Now I think what we're gonna do here is we're gonna throw these stacks in. I'm gonna tear this bike down right now, throw the stacks in, and then test it again. We're gonna see what kind of gains we get from the stacks. Hey guys, I got a list here. And before I start installing these stacks, I wanna show you guys exactly what the person paid for versus what they got. $700, okay? So they had a cold start fix, which we verified was fixed through actually starting the bike and looking at the coding. We have the idle ramp control. It's modified, but it's modified only 5%, meaning it should be modified more than that, but hey, it's there, okay? Torque limiters removed, it says. They are stock. Yeah, nothing was done with the torque limiters on this bike. TPS throttle set to 100% in all maps. It's modified, yes, but this actually slows the bike down if you don't know what you're doing. You modify everything to 100%, which is what we verified on there. That's what makes that little bit of a lag when I was going through the throttle. So that's when you don't go 100% throttle. And sometimes even, it'll actually limp the bike too. So I'm sure that's happened before on some ones of these tunes, but let's go to the next thing. Timing tables advanced for more low and mid-range top power. It modifies it. Yes, they are modified, but the bike doesn't care. There's something else you have to do with knock control and a few other things to actually make that timing matter, because this bike has so many tables. When it sees knock or it senses knock, it just starts moving to a different timing table, starts moving it lower and lower basically, and goes to a safety map if it still sees knock even after that. The stop speed limiter removed from 319 or 318 to 399. This is stock. Okay. Quick shifter, kill times for faster upshift and downshift. It is stock. This is a bone stock shifter. This person was promised a modified shifter. It's bone stock. AFR tables modified or adjusted to 12.8, 13.1 from rider demand for top speeds. So basically what the tuner did is he modified just 10,000 plus, because we verified it by looking at this thing, to a 14.2, which is a little bit lean. A lot of it lean actually. I think he probably thinks it's making more power when it's leaner, but it's not good for the bike, and it's not really making any power. And you can see in the mid-range, it is a complete disaster. It's actually open loop in the mid-range, and the top end is where he commands that AFR, which is 14.2. Don't understand why he did that either. And there's no adaptations done. There's nothing done that's other than stock on this bike. All right, he says he did adaptive fueling for full-time closed loop. First of all, there's not full-time closed loop. We just verified it's only 10,000 on it. It's at 14.2. And he says it's adaptive for all kinds of fuels. It is not adaptive for all kinds of fuels. It's bone stock. So if bone stock is adaptive for all kinds of fuels, like it says race gas on here, which it's not adaptive at all. Early fan on for temps, or early fan on temps for the engine. We did verify that is modified. He was correct on that one. Servo motor codes turned off. It's actually stock. They are not turned off on this. Intake flap codes off. They're also stock. The intake flapper opening and closing, meaning when you turn the bike on, there's flappers in these newer bikes where they actually stay closed, completely closed like this, and at 6,000 RPM they open up. and that allows air into it. Now, a lot of tuners, what they'll do is, right when you start the bike up, it just opens up and stays open the entire time you have the bike on. This tuner, it's bone stock, so that means it stays closed. The airbox is completely closed, and I'll show you guys in a little bit what that looks like, till 6,000 RPM. At 6,000 RPM, it finally opens up and stays open beyond 6,000 RPM. But he's saying it's open the entire time when it's not. It's bone stock right now. So we modified it so it is actually open. So those are just a few things that we noticed. Tuner claimed here, person paid for, it did not get. So we're adding all this stuff onto the bike that actually does do all the things that this guy's claiming, but we actually do them. All right, we are completely torn down here. It took me probably 15 minutes. I've done this so many times, it's ridiculous. And this is what I was talking about, those flappers, guys. So you can see we command it wide open, so they're wide open right now. They will cycle when you start the bike. It'll close and open. I can't move them right now. They're stuck in place. So they'll close and open, they'll stay open like that. Whereas the competitor's tune, those were closed until 6,000 RPM. This is open all the time now. Now let's get to the good stuff, which is the air box right there. We're gonna be replacing these stacks right here. So we're gonna get rid of these plastic ones, and we're gonna put our hard stacks in here, and we're gonna remove these funnels. This is a step people usually kind of gloss over and don't know about, but these funnels, they don't move like the S1000R or the M1000R. So on the XR, the S1000 XR and the S1000 single R, these are static and they need to be removed from the box before you install our stacks. And I know this probably looks like a lot of work right here, but I do have a complete video tutorial. Check it out right there in the top right of how to tear the bike down, and not only just tearing the bike down, but also removing the stacks. And you can see right here the stacks, they're coming out. I just use the pliers to pull these things out. Once they come out, funnels come out, and you can see the air box is pretty wet right there with the oil. A lot of people don't notice this until they actually replace the stacks, and the stacks start leaking a little bit, which we have fixes for at this point, but know that our stacks do not cause oil leakage. This is already in the air box before I even touched it. This is how it is just from the factory. It sucks oil straight from this thing right here. All right, check it out, guys. Now we have all the funnels out of here. You can see they break right out. They're very brittle. The plastic's very brittle, so they kind of just break out with a couple easy tools. And now the stacks are gone. Now we're ready for velocity stacks. All right, guys, stacks are installed. The funnels themselves, extremely brittle. You just kind of used some longer side cutting pliers, cut the stages out between them, and then pulled them out. It's very brittle plastic. It just pulls right out and breaks. And then just make sure you clean out all the debris from the airbox. I made sure I cleaned out all the oil from here. And we're ready to go. We got the good stacks in there. And one thing you want to make sure of when you get to velocity stacks, guys, you need an air filter. Need one, you need an aftermarket one. Now we provide DNA and Sprint options on our website, but this is what's gonna really peak out that power, is the air filter. Now, if I were to put this on stock, not really a big difference in power whatsoever, but the stacks, because they move so much more air, I would say it's required to get advertised gains to get this air filter because it just moves air. All right, with the air filter and stacks now, we are ready to put this back in the bike, and the only other mod I'd suggest on here is an IAT relocation. It relocates the IAT, the intake air temperature sensor, from here at the top all the way to the front of the bike here. I'm not going to install this because we want a true and accurate on just what the stacks do, but the IAT gives a nice consistent reading, whereas right now the reading would be, I don't know, 117 if I let this thing idle for a couple minutes, whereas the ambient here is like 65 degrees. I made a full video on the comparisons for the IAT and the gains and the benefits from it right there. There's a link for it if you guys want to check it out. All right, we are all back together, and now I'm going to run on the dyno and see how much power she makes with the stacks. Here we go. All right, all wrapped up here. Let's see the numbers here. We've got red with stacks and tuning, and blue without stacks and tuning. So these are both our tunes here. Now you can see at the top here, we are making almost 20 wheel horsepower peak to peak here, and you can see where the blue line is, that's just choking for air right there. We're sacrificing a little bit of mid-range here, a couple wheel horsepower right here. This is 4-wheel horsepower, so sacrificing little bits to gain quite a bit of top here, a substantial amount of top. Whereas just looking at the numbers here, we are gaining 8-wheel horsepower and 4-wheel torque. Now, if we were to compare this, for example, to the stock map right there, you can see this is a stock, bone stock map, not losing anything, and then we just start gaining and carrying up top. I mean, it's inconceivable how much more power this is up top. It's pretty crazy, actually, how much more power it is. You can see our peak-to-peak 9-wheel horsepower, peak-to-peak 2-wheel torque, but that's not the whole story, of course, because if we just throw it right over here, this thing starts rolling off. We got 1,500 more RPM right here of more power band, less shifting of the track, a lot more power. This makes this power band huge and more usable for people that are more for top-end riders. Now, if we're gonna compare this to how it rolled in here, there it is right there. Now, blue, of course, is our tuning and stacks, and red was the competitor tune with no stacks. And you can see right here, it was failing pretty much everywhere. We're pretty much carrying over everything here, even with the stacks, and up top, it's a substantial gain, of course, with the stacks. But I mean, our map is just so much cleaner than that competitor map. I mean, if you were losing races before you got his mapping for 700 bucks, you're still losing races with the mapping. I mean, it's even worse than stock, as we said before. So I think that's gonna wrap it up. Let's get this thing on the street here. Let's see what it does 60 through 130 for the changes with the stacks and everything, and wrap up this video.
So I'm back here post-flash, single R, and I can tell you, this bike is so much better now. This is way better. The shifting alone is much better. I'll make this real quick. Looks green. Yeah, the shifting is much better. I mean, you can hear it even. If you compare it with the before, the shifting is so much smoother and faster. It's crazy. The downshifts feel crisper. The upshifts feel better. And the power is so on demand now. It's much, much better. I mean, this is second gear. I just lifted the tire up in second gear on 3/4 throttle. And then shifted into third. That's how good this feels now. It feels really confidence-inspiring, the power at this point. It has a lot of good feel to it. I don't know how to quantify it really. Whereas before, it didn't feel like it was a one-to-one. Even though this is still smooth, I get a smooth feel for it. But if I want to, it's right there. Unlike that last tune where there was like a lag or a delay in me hitting the gas. This just feels so much more smooth and comfortable. Even down low as riding through the streets, it feels so much better. And the way the shifter feels really complements the entire package, whereas before it just felt stock, and as we found out from the coating, it was 100% stock. The full-time closed loop we've got now, meaning the bike is tuning itself 100% of the time. And the last tune, that was what they called a full-time closed lie instead of full-time closed loop. There was no full-time closed loop. Just beyond 10,000, he was trying to lean the bike out to give it more power, because you lean it a little bit, it will make a little more power. But man, to target 14.2, that's wild. And especially when you don't know what fuel your customers are using, you don't know about, this guy's just assuming you have the best fuel on hand. There's never any issues with the fuel. That didn't make any sense at all. And this feels so much smoother than what he did. And this is always targeting AFR. BT Moto is the only one that offers this, and it feels amazing. Any kind of different atmospheric condition, the wide bands that are factory in this bike, there's 2 wide bands and 2 narrow bands. So I'm gonna go over here and do some 60 through 130 stuff real fast. All right, here for the after 60 through 130. Now we've got the stacks and tuning in here. Let's see how she does. Let's see the difference. All right, let's get that 60 through 130. And that was a 5.2 to a 5.6. So 5.2 with tuning and stacks versus 5.6 with competitor tuning. I'd say that's quite an increase, 60 through 130, and it's just going to get better and better the more you keep up this bike in the top end, because that's where this bike is making all that power now, as we saw in the dyno. Overall, I'd say this is quite an improvement, not just only stock, but over that competitor's tune that was horrific. Let's put it that way. One of the things we hear from email about people that went to competitors, weren't happy, and came back to us was the fact that their tune was cheaper and claimed the same things that we claim. Well, yeah, they're trying to get your money. They're going to claim the same things, but we just debunked everything line by line of exactly what they did, what they claimed, and what they actually did to the bike, which was maybe 2% of what they actually claimed. So you want to be careful and make sure you look through actual reviews, do your research, because I mean, spending $700 that's not cheap, man. And $700 for something that is mailed out to you, and something that the tuner himself hasn't tested on the dyno, because he's just sitting there doing it on a computer and doesn't realize what this actually does to the bike until he puts on a dyno. So be careful who you guys go with. Do a lot of research. Even though we're BT, yes, we're more expensive, but yes, our customer service is better. But yes, our tuning is better. Yes, it's tried and true. Yes, we have world records to back everything up, where everyone else just has kind of, hate to say it, smoke and mirrors, or just kind of, oh, on Instagram, check out this guy beat this guy. That doesn't mean anything to us. There's so many variables that go into riding, tuning, to setting up bikes. I can make a bone stock bike beat our best tune any day of the week with just a simple couple mods to the bike itself. So it's kind of like, it's a real kind of trick thing that people do. And again, our tuning's very simple. We mail it out to you guys. You guys take it out of the box, plug in your computer. All you need is a Windows-based platform computer and email, and we'll mail you tuning to your house. And the reason why we can do that is because we test so much on bikes coast to coast. Our main office is in Massachusetts. I'm here in California, and we're testing coast to coast different bikes constantly, making sure our tuning is good. If not good, we make it even better. So that's what you want to see from everyone that's tuning. You want to see the bikes actually on the dyno. You want to see the actual results on GPS, people talking about them. Do your research, people. I can't stress that enough. Do your research. I think that's going to wrap up this video. I got to get this bike back to the owner now, so I'm going to enjoy the last few miles I have left on it, because this bike is a blast now. I'll see you guys in the next one.